welcome to episode 31 of Masters of the Forge. I'm Adam.
And I'm Snorre.
And this episode comes at you a little bit after Snorre's vacation to the UK. Snorre, did you have a wonderful time?
I hated it.
Oh, yeah, sure you did.
Yeah, of course I didn't. Come on, I was visiting the overlords. That's always fun.
Yeah, I bet it is.
Yeah.
I don't know I do have a frame of reference at Adepticon, and that's fun.
Yeah.
But it must be even more fun to go to the Englands.
Yeah, you did actually meet Jason Mullins, and you did meet John from the Overlords and Kieran, but...
Oh, you saw Kieran?
Oh, no, I didn't. Not this
okay.
time. But I did meet Jason, John, and also Mr. Andrew Craig, also known as Skew, the guy that does the editing of the show. So Andrew was actually nice enough to lend me his couch for the weekend. Many thanks. And, well, it was a really fun, laid-back weekend, to be honest.
Great. That's awesome, dude.
Yeah.
Nice.
Though it doesn't have any kind of impact on, well, what we did and everything, I hate the British weather. Last year when I was there, it was so hot. They had like a heat wave going on. That was May last year. They sort of had a heat wave going on now also, but it was overcast and extremely humid. So it was like shoveling air. Whenever you opened the window, you felt like your sweat was kind of like...
You're swimming through the air.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It was pretty awful. So it's like no matter what you did, you were just sweating, and it was clammy. It was like, ugh.
English weather and New York weather are kind of similar, but they're a bit wetter than us. But well, depending on where in New York, I suppose. But I imagine London to be a little bit wetter than where I live. Like apparently there are some parts of New York that are almost technically a rainforest by like biome wise, just short of a rainforest, whereas the Pacific Northwest that is a legitimate temperate rainforest. It's just always raining.
Yeah. So what did I do in London, you ask? Well, Overlords talked about this thing from the Horus Heresy books called Tactical Strike a few episodes ago, and it really piqued my interest. So we decided to try it out, and I played a game first against Jason, and then afterwards I played a game against Andrew, and I love it. That's the type of game where you have resources, so whether you win or lose the game, you get resource points. Holding objectives gives you resource points, and then you can spend those on upgrading your armor. There were some limitations on running, and if you rolled 1 when shooting your bolters, you would actually have to snapfire the next round simply because you're trying to conserve ammo, because you're low on ammo. And you can actually buy your way out of this by spending resource points at the end of a game. So it's really a campaign system, and, well, I thought it was really fun.
Nice, dude. That's awesome. That sounds like fun. And you had at least one game of that?
Yeah, we went to the club on Sunday, and I had a game against James Brown and one other guy. Sorry, I don't remember your name right now, but...
God, y'all!
Yeah, James Brown, everyone. So it was James Brown and one other guy playing Eldar against Jason, playing his Space Wolf, his 30k Space Wolves, actually, and me playing my 40k Death Guard. So we didn't care about the whole allies chart and just went for it.
Yeah.
But we were playing, I think it was a 1750 each. And yeah, I'm on the same side as everyone else that hates the Eldar Codex. We did not face hard Eldar lists. They were reasonable and they were actually quite fluffy. We were demolished. Towards the end of the game, we were starting to get things turned around a little bit, so we were starting to feel that we might actually have been able to, well, sort of make a draw, but we lost hard. There was almost nothing left of either of our armies left, and there was a lot of Eldar left. So yeah.
Well, they're super fast. You're running Death Guard. It's a little hard to get up ends.
Yeah, it wasn't so much the just getting in contact. There was no problem getting in contact. Problem is there was so much D strength and well, all kinds of nasty weapons. I
Mm-hmm.
think we're just taken off the table because well, I couldn't really survive it. So
Right.
uh, we were massively unlucky though because Jason had one of those. I think it was the Proto Land Raider with quad las gun sponsons and everything. The first thing that happens, one penetration, boom, explodes.
Oh yeah, that's brutal.
It was the only thing more or less the only thing we had on the table that could deal with the Wraith Knight. So he's like, yeah.
Yeah.
From that moment on, we was like, yeah, okay, this is going to be a short game.
Better start drinking.
Yeah. So yeah,
That's awesome.
it was a fun game, but it was not massively enjoyable. But since last time I was there, I was the one who beat James Brown really hard. He had almost no models on the table when I was finished with him. This time he did the same to me, so we're even.
Revenge is a dish best served cold. That means that the next time you go, no, when you come to America next, you'll have to have a final winner take all battle.
Yeah, best of three. Speaking of America, because James Brown is moving to America, he actually had a gift for me because he couldn't exactly bring everything he owns to America because he's moving there to be with his wife, to be his fiance at the moment, actually. He gave me his copy of Conquest because he didn't really have room for it in his suitcase or anything. So, hey, hooray! I got Conquest.
That is awesome. I remember we played a little bit of Conquest with Kieran at Adepticon. That was a lot of fun.
It was. There's a lot of things to remember when you're playing. At least I felt like that. There was like a lot of things that were happening at once, so it was kind of hard to get into. But I'm pretty sure if I could just give it a few more tries, I'm probably gonna crack the code and just play it better. I'm not gonna be good at it, but at least I'm gonna not suck massively.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's good.
Yeah. So one of the main reasons why I was in the UK in the first place was to pick up my Renegade conversion bits from Forge World.
Ooh.
Wow. As people have seen on Facebook, if you've been there, there's a lot of Forge World stuff on the table when I took the picture. And I've set aside all the Renegade Ogrins so I can just rub some sandpaper on it to scruff them up a little bit and just get going with the blue and the paint and everything. Oh, those Ogrins look so nasty.
Yeah.
So really looking forward to that.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing them snore. I think they're going to be awesome.
Yeah,
That's going to be a
can't wait.
beautiful army when you get done with it.
Hope so. So there's actually one more thing that I picked up. I'm not quite sure if it makes me a hipster for buying it now when it's not hip to buy it, or whether I'm not a hipster in the first place for buying it now instead of when it was hip, or yeah, I don't know how that stuff works. But I picked up Assassinorum Executioner Force, mainly for the models.
Nice, dude.
I've heard it's an okay game, and the models are definitely worth the price alone. So, why not? I can always use the Renegades and the Chaos Marines, and the Assassin models are beautiful. And I've actually thought about maybe including an Averser Assassin in my Renegade force, just because, well, he's sort of Corn Berserker ish. He might fall to Chaos. I feel so.
That's a nice kit. It's a good value.
Yeah, it seems to be. I think it was the independent characters who made a breakdown of all the models in there, and pretty much covered the cost of the box by,
Mm-hmm.
well, if you bought the models separately, you would still pay more than the box. And the assassin models are just gorgeous. So yeah,
Right, right. Yeah. Yeah, they are. They're really pretty. They're doing really well with their independent character plastics. Again, I kind of wish they were a little more easy to modify, but you really can't complain too much. My brother-in-law bought the Blood Angels Terminator Librarian the other day at the store, and that is a nice model. That is a super nice model.
yeah. When we were in London, Jason picked up one of those Mechanicum HQ models, the one with the prawn-like legs,
Mm-hmm.
and it's a gorgeous model, and it's all plastic.
Yeah, they're really nice. So, did you do anything else, Nora? Is that it?
That's pretty much it.
Cool.
We ate at a Cuban place after we had visited Dark Sphere for well, we had to pick up the Space Marine Codex since it's released on Saturday, and
Yeah.
met up with some other guys that are at the club, and it was really fun. It was a really relaxed weekend. We just hung out and ate and drank and had fun.
Dude, I'm really pleased at the looks of that Space Marine Codex, by the way. I'm really, really happy with how they've decided to go with it. There's
Yeah, the correction. Yeah,
it's like you can actually field Space Marines the way they're kind of should be fielded, and it's not, and it's just as powerful as running some gimmick nonsense with them. So I think it's really cool. I'm really happy with it. So
Ma-
like you can actually field like a battle company, and it feels like it's worth running it that way. And that's generally how I run my Space Marines. And I have a few buddies at the store who I have a buddy who plays Black Templars. His name's Darwin. He plays Black Templars, and you don't have to win to have fun, but like a lot of the time for him, it feels like he's on his back foot, and he's really just there to remove models. And with the new codex, he was able to bring he could bring his three. He actually brought his three Vindicators and used the formation to great effect, and he had a lot of fun. uh it was a close game, but who cares as long as you're enjoying yourself.
yeah.
So,
I
and I think the whole codex at this point is just wonderful for running Space Marines exactly how they're depicted in the books.
Yeah, I think that one of the biggest improvements for my sake is weapon skill, ballistic skill for scouts.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. I mean, I don't get it personally. I would like that part. I was like, I don't understand it because aren't they supposed to be aren't they not like trained yet, or are they?
They are definitely trained in many ways, but they're not like combat trained in the same manner as a tactical marine, for example. Tactical marines are pretty much the pinnacle of space marines when it comes to they've been devastators, they've been assault marines and everything. But I don't see they have all the implants, so their physique should mean that they can hold the rifle just as well as a normal tac marine. So why should they have worse ballistic skill? They are just as strong and just as agile as a normal space marine would be. So why shouldn't they have a weapon skill of 4? So I think it's
Okay.
a nice one. They are proper space marines. They just don't have the same equipment. They don't have the power armor. They don't have the same kind of like heavy bolter, or sorry, yeah, they don't have really that same kind of equipment as
Hmm.
normal space marines have access to, but they're still basically a space marine.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
I
Well, I
like
mean, I
it.
understand it. I mean, it's been like somebody saying Darwin. His acolytes just got way better because of that. So, I mean, I
Yeah,
can't complain about it. I like it as far as for people like being able to more easily run their armies. It's
yeah,
just that part fluff wise, I feel like it would be better if scouts were 3-3, and then devastators are ballistic skill 4, and then when they become assault marines they become weapon
four
skill
four.
4. And I
Yeah,
thought that would be cool. But you know what? It's a small quibble for what I think is a really excellent book so far. But that's really all. I mean, in this cursory look, so soon. Plus, we're not really a competitive podcast, anyways. So these are
yeah.
just our thoughts.
But
You
then
know.
again, also it makes it a lot easier for the bookkeeping. Space Marines are now 4 4 4 4 4
Yeah,
4 4
no,
4
that's
4
true.
4, and maybe
Easier
a
for
5.
people. Yeah, and again, I think these changes really are great from the narrative sense too, because you can just run anything and have cool and fun rules to back it up. Like there's nothing stopping any of us from running whatever we want, obviously, but the fact that the book has fun and cool rules for running it that way is even better.
Yeah, doesn't feel like it's too much of a gimmick thing.
Mm-mm.
There were some weird things with the whole formations and squadrons having special rules and that kind of thing. But
That part is my favorite part.
Yeah,
because you're actually running stuff the way it's meant to be run.
yeah. It's like, okay, so as long as you have 3 Vindicators or 3 Whirlwinds or 3
Mhm.
whatever, then they get special rules. It's like, yeah, okay, we get it, Games Workshop. You're trying to shift more models. Really is.
Maybe,
But
yeah. I mean, whatever.
I can live with that. It's if people want to have 3 Vindicators on the table for that special effect, they're welcome to do so. I'm not
Yeah,
going to build whirlwinds or buy whirlwinds just because, but I'm going to have my
yeah.
drop pods and my assault marines and my devastators, even though I probably won't have that awesome. Oh, you had to buy this extra special thing to get the extra special thing that was leaked to the internet, anyways.
Right. And you know what's cool? I mean, you don't need any of those things to win games, right? So you don't need to run 3 Vindicators to win a game. It's not gonna. It's not like it's not like a super crunchy option. But for people who do have that stuff, I have a buddy who has like 9 predators because homeboy loves predators. Well, now he can actually get special rules for doing that. Same guy has 1,000,000 dreadnoughts because homeboy loves dreadnoughts. He had a 12 drop pod dreadnought list back in the day, and he just loved playing it, even though it wasn't I think he used like Blood Angels for it or something. Anyways, we're getting way off the topic here. It's just
Yeah,
really fun. I'm really glad to see it, and I can't wait to see how it affects my Star Eagles because it's going to be interesting. That the one demi company that I want to use for my Star Eagles, which is perfect for them, does require a chaplain, and my army doesn't have chaplains. So I might come up with some kind of interesting unit that to reflect that on the table. It's not like, you know what I'm saying, not
yeah.
chaplain per se, but something else. I'm not sure. I'm happy to take suggestions from the from the listeners for that one.
Yep.
So what I've been up to. I don't know. Let's see. What have I been doing?
I think.
Jason, drum roll, please. Thank you. The Titans are done. Da 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 da. They're finally finished snoring.
And about
Oh,
time, right?
oh my goodness. I am so happy right now that those are done. Bleepity bleep bleep. Because I'll tell you what, they have sucked the life out of me the past year and a half, and I am so over them. So over them. And it's like a cavalcade of failures, right? One thing after the other with these things, just over and over again, stuff going wrong. And even at the last night I was working on them, all of a sudden my freaking airbrush, like for every 5 minutes of spraying, I had 10 minutes of cleaning with this Vallejo primer.
That's
It would
weird.
just gunk, yeah, it would just gunk up inside my airbrush, and I had to go clean it out again. Like fully break the airbrush down, wash it out, and put it back together again for another 5 minutes of brushing. I was so incensed. The eighth time I was spraying, or the eighth time I was cleaning the airbrush, I was counting. The eighth time I had to clean my airbrush, they were almost done getting primed. A piece of my airbrush goes down the drain of the sink.
Ouch.
And I'm like, I was so mad. I just stopped. I'm like, okay, I'm done.
I can
But
understand that one. I just find it really weird because I've been using Vallejo primers, like the big bottles of Vallejo
yeah,
primer,
that's the one. The big
for
bottles of black primer.
2 years now. At least a year and a half, probably closer to 2 years, and I love it. It's the
The
most
pri-
amazing thing. Straight into the airbrush, brush away, nothing, no problems ever.
right. Well, I don't know. I don't know how much time you're spending priming because I'm just sitting there priming for minutes on end. Where normally you're done with a model really quickly. I had these 2 giant models that were like, I'm just or it might be that they sat there a while, the bottles, but that shouldn't matter because
They're usually
they don't
so
actually have
well.
pigment in them. They
Yeah,
don't.
well, it seems like they're so well sealed, anyways. The bottles that
Yeah,
there shouldn't be anything that comes in and gunks it up.
Do you have a gravity feed or a
Yeah,
suction feed? You have a gravity
gravity.
feed. That might be it. It might not like my suction feed airbrush. I really want to get a gravity feed, but
Yeah,
anyways, the
suction feed
Titans are
sucks.
done. I haven't sent them yet. I have to. I feel like I want to actually finish priming them before I send them, but you can see some imperfections. They're not perfect. These Titans are not the perfect that I was hoping for, but I just can't. I don't have the skill to make them absolutely perfect. And let's be honest, the amount that I got for them did not call for perfect, anyways. So that's fine. Um, aside from that, I did check in to see how much it costs to ship a pallet to the UK, a small pallet for 50 kilograms, which I think is about the weight of all my models, all my orcs. I think I don't know how much a kilogram is, whatever. And at 150 centimeters by 150 centimeters by 75 centimeters is 1,781 pounds. So I'm not doing that. You'd think it would be a lot cheaper to ship that way, but it is
Yeah,
definitely not. It is not cheap. I would maybe if I could put myself in the box and ship myself. eh, oh well.
good
So
idea, bad
yeah.
execution.
Yeah, it's too bad. So since the Titans are done, I started the Necrons. Da, da,
Celebration
da.
time.
Yeah, celebration times. Come on. I actually, like, at the beginning of the month, like I said before, I made the Necrons my June independent characters hobby progress challenge, just to get me motivated, and I might be regretting that because I think I'm pretty sure I can still paint them in time. It's the assembly. I decided to cheap out and not buy secret weapon miniatures bases for them, the beveled swamp bases, which would have actually been pretty awesome. But that would have cost me, like, I would have had to get 32 mils because the Necron stance is so wide they go over the base and they wouldn't
Yeah,
have fit inside the beveled base.
I remember that problem when I was building my Necrons. It was
Mm-hmm.
annoying.
Yeah, so I would have had to get 32s, and 161 32 millimeter bases is really expensive. I'm not saying it's not worth it. I'm just saying I need to allocate my money elsewhere in my life. I personally can't spend 200 and whatever dollars on just on bases for an army. So, I made my own bases. So this is the process. I'm going for a boreal swamp theme.
Yep.
So this boreal swamp is like grasses, trees, pieces of trees, and kind of dark water, very dark water, black almost. So I started with some green stuff lumps with channels sculpted into them. So like I would put like a big lump on one side of the base, and I would kind of just sculpt these channels where water would come running into the swamp. And then there were some that were just little mounds, and some, different shapes. Some of them with like ledges, more of a ledge to them where I'm going to put like grasses, and some of them that just slope right into the water where there's like a channel, like a water channel, like a jetty. Um then I did a kind of a sandy coat of like some sand and white glue, which is PVA, I think, in overseas.
Yeah,
Yeah,
PVA or wood glue.
yeah, PVA on the tops of the mounds. Then I did a full coat of PVA and plaster, dental plaster. PVA, a little water, and some dental plaster over the entire surface of the base. Then, once those were dry, I sprayed them with clear coat, and now I'm starting to glue the legs to the bases. I'm finding the mold lines on some of these to be a little over the top, a little much for me. It's annoying. It looks like there's a difference between some of the plastics, or maybe it's just, they bought a new mold and it's good, and then the mold wears off and suddenly it starts getting mold lines, as it wears out. So some of them, the mold lines are okay, some of them they're terrible. So I'm gonna finish gluing those to the bases, and then I'm gonna do another layer of the white glue and plaster to kind of cover up where the feet are going into the water. So just the flat water spots is where this last layer of PVA and plaster is going. So the legs that are standing on mounds of dirt aren't submerged, but the ones that are standing on water are slightly submerged. It's not nothing. It's nowhere near as good as actual beveled bases, but it's what I got. It's what I can do.
Yeah, but hey, I've seen the pictures. Your bases actually look really nice, but it seems like there was a lot of work.
It is a lot of work, and if you've got the expendable income, the wonderful blasted, I think blasted wetlands bases from Secret Weapon Miniatures are fantastic for this kind of base. So,
and that's exactly the base type that I'm getting from my Space Marines when I'm rebasing my Death Guard at some point.
That's great, dude. We should have an army with the Death Guard versus Necrons, just like zombie attack.
Yeah, nothing like robo zombies versus filthy diseased zombies.
Yep, and I think that's about it. I did have some narrative games with Jason. Jason, our sound doctor. Thanks again to Jason for editing the last episode. He's going to be up to editing this episode as well after some notes from the listeners and from us. Did a great job, and I hope he continues to want to do that because that's a big help for us. But those narrative games, I'm not going to talk about them here. Instead, I'm going to try to get an actual narrative recording or a narrative battle report for that for either this episode or the next. So with that, do you have anything else you want to talk about, Snar?
Nope, I think we're done.
All right. So we'll be right back after these messages.
Hey everybody, check out Veterans of the Long War, a Warhammer 40K podcast on iTunes and on Facebook. We are a 40K podcast based out of Western Massachusetts with contributors from other parts of New England. We talk hobby, tactics, news, and rumors, check out new releases, and talk about our local and regional 40K scene. We're looking for new contributors, so get in touch if you want to be a part. Check us out on iTunes and Facebook. That's Veterans of the Long War, a Warhammer 40K podcast.
Welcome back!
I so want to kill you right now.
This next segment is on something that we've been wanting to do for a little while. Something that we already kind of did back in our Battle of the Fang coverage, which is narrative objective markers. Right now, we're dealing with 6 random objectives in the game, which is cool,
yep.
Which is nice, but we could do a lot better than that, can't we?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
So, now you're going to see what we made of. What are objectives? They can be pretty much anything you want. Usually you don't just flip a coin onto the table and it's like, yeah, that's a thing. I'm going to take it.
Mm-hmm.
At least most games where I play, we kind of have an idea about what the objective is supposed to be.
Mm-hmm.
If you put an objective inside a bunker, then it's a strategically located bunker, or it might be something that controls something for a later game. If we are having a 3-game narrative, for example. So we try to do something slightly more than just it's a place I need to hold. We try to give it some meaning. And what kind of value does it have? Well, depends on what it is, really. But if you play a narrative game, you can make it massively important, or it's like, yeah, you know what, this objective isn't too important for me. But this other one, maybe it's because it's closer to you or it's going to be easier for you to hold. But in your mind, you're making it more important to you. But if you also open this up for the other players, like one of the examples we're going to present here is information about how to find a fallen. If you're a Dark Angels player and you want to say, oh, okay, this objective is information I want, then you also give the opponent a reason to really screw you over for that objective, even though it's tactically not really all that interesting.
Yeah, and I've found that in some of the narrative games I've been playing recently, that the kinds of objectives that we want to show up, even when we're doing mysterious objectives, we tend to say kind of fudge things a little bit to make them what we think is most narratively proper at the time. And I think that if we just kind of give up on the whole pretense of the mysterious objective and actually play the objectives the way we want to, I think that expands our narrative experience greatly. We know ahead of time what we're going for. We know ahead of time what kinds of objectives we want to complete our goals, to push forward the story that we're trying to tell, right? So, and that makes it way more immersive. Otherwise, you're just playing like this competitive game where it's this nebulous quote unquote objective on the field. Granted, you could consider it, seizing ground, kind of. We've used missions like that in our own offerings quite often. So there's nothing wrong with that. But if you're running a narrative campaign, you probably want to try doing something a little more fun. And what we've done today is kind of come up with a way to not only allow you, the listener, to try out new things, but also as a system for us to use on our missions that we make for you. So I just want to talk quickly about what is an objective in 40K and what has value to 40K factions. So I did a little math. God help me, I did a little math. And if you use very conservative math, the metals that exist in the planet Mercury is very heavily iron. There's a lot of metals in Mercury on the planet Mercury. Like, its core is super dense. And I looked up the mass of a lunar class cruiser, which is about 28 million metric tons. You can actually build, if you were to extract all the metals out of Mercury, and granted, these aren't the super special metals that, like, this isn't adamantium or anything, but a lunar class cruiser isn't made out of 100% adamantium, I'll tell you that much. But you could actually build 9 trillion lunar class cruisers with just the core of Mercury. So certain things that are valuable to a game set in modern times, or even in like slightly older times, like a World War II or a Wild West or whatever, what have you. Those kinds of objectives have little meaning to 40K, unless you're talking about entire worlds. In that respect, when it comes to natural resources, you want to think of other more hard to get things, especially if you're playing Space Marines. No one's going to send the Space Marines in to get a load of freaking magnesium or whatever, right?
Yeah, seems like a waste. It's clear that the Imperium doesn't really care too much about some kind of metal here and some kind of metal there, or some other resource that they can use for something, because they have thousands of planets in the Imperium. You're not going to run out of these kinds of materials. Food, that could be a problem, but, they recycle that too, apparently. So, what do they care about? Beyond the Imperial Creed itself, the Imperium does value certain things above all others, like information, technology, important people, or historical relics. And we're going to cover all these soon.
For example, I think information is probably one of the most important objectives in the game, and probably in any kind of scenario based game, actually, because you're talking about entire empires rising and falling because of certain information that was or was not disclosed to people in power, right?
Yep.
Like, the entire story of Magnus revolves around his ability or lack thereof of bringing information to the Emperor, right? So, look at me knowing stuff. What?
Yeah. You're talking about Magnus the Red, of course, of the Primarch of the Thousand Suns.
That's right.
Yeah. I'm actually reading The Thousand Suns now.
Mm-hmm.
It's an awesome book. I'm at
Nice.
the point where they're trying to get in touch with Horus as he's in this coma thing, and it's getting very exciting.
I can't wait for After Ulanor to put out another episode. What a great podcast.
Oh yes.
So anyways, information. So like what kinds of information would we expect to see as the focus of a scenario?
Well, there's information about the logistics of your opponent's force, maybe.
Oh, that's a clear
where are they sending ships from and to, and what's in these ships? You know, you want to sabotage your enemy by actually making sure that his forces doesn't arrive at the battle. Mm-hmm. So that, hey, that's an interesting intercept mission. You're trying to intercept some kind of stolen package. You know, many Bothans died to deliver that stuff.
Yep. You got data collected on an enemy by spies. You can actually run like assassins or commandos and farseers and stuff, and have them interact with the mission in some way.
Yep. And then there's knowledge of how to build lost technology, so STC tapes, that kind of thing.
Yep. We could also do history. For some races, history is so very important. Like for Eldar, librarians, chroniclers, and there's a more nefarious side to information gathering.
The Inquisition is always looking for evidence of misdeeds or heresy.
Or the Dark Angels are always cutting off their nose to spite their face in the search for the fallen.
Yeah, there's also information about renegade military units, or specifically officers, generals, which is very important to the Imperium to make sure that they can make examples of them or just remove them from history.
Right.
There's psychers, cultists, people who need to be controlled by the Imperium.
And there's also the concept of the campaigns leading into another, so you could actually include the location of another objective that you're looking for in your scenarios. Always kind of keeping that one piece of information ready to go so that you can build on the campaign as you move forward with it.
If you're using the planetary empires, then you could always do, if you hold this objective at the end of the game, then you actually learn which tile contains an important clue for further games or some kind of advantage, and only you know it after the game is over. Anyone who holds it in subsequent games also knows it, but it's secret. So, yeah, I like that one.
Yeah. So then we also have technology. Technology is an obvious objective to use, and a lot of the objectives in the current game are kind of technology based objectives, like the grav wave generator and the Skyfire Nexus. Some pieces of technology could be a little more mundane than that. So objectives that kind of have a more pedestrian use, and you might tie those in later in your games so that it actually has more value than you think.
Well, if you're MacGyver, you can make anything be more valuable than you think.
That's right. Or even an ensigner.
Engine seer?
I'm just messing with you.
Yeah.
What other technology items can we expect to use as objectives?
Well, STCs come up again. Advanced technology, lost technology. And even though an STC has been discovered by the Imperium, that doesn't mean that it's well discovered and everything. It could mean that...
it doesn't mean you can build the thing.
Yeah, well, I was actually thinking more of, well, maybe some evil Chaos Renegades or Chaos Space Marines are just like, yeah, you know what? We're gonna steal that. There you have a defend, take, or like a seize or defend kind of objective. So there's
Yeah.
also alien technology,
Yeah.
because, even if the Imperium doesn't like technological innovation or Xenos, doesn't mean that they can't steal technology
Oh
from
yeah.
Xenos and try to implement it into their own evil machine things.
Yeah, and it's not like there aren't factions that would benefit from it. So you could do it with Inquisition. Could look for Xenos tech. Mechanicum certainly could. They love that stuff. Certainly, someone with a rogue trader army would be very interested in Xenos technology. You could also do kind of similar to the location of another objective under information. We could also have keys which unlock other things later in the campaign, like a vault or start up a super heavy or something on the field in a later game. So that would be fun. You find if you don't grab the key, the GM or the person running the game puts a Titan on the field and says, "Yeah, that's just terrain in this game. It could have been a unit in your army, but you didn't get the key or whatever."
That is just like the last mission of Dawn of War, the first game.
Oh, it is?
The first expansion for Dawn of War, the original, called Winter Assault, because in the last mission you're fighting against the Xenos or Chaos or Loyalists, depending on what side you chose, and another outside faction just shows up, and all you can do, well, you can always try to kill this third faction just by using, throwing bodies at them, but that's going to be a really hard fight. So, conveniently enough, there's sort of a fallen Titan that you're fighting around, so you can actually control the Titan and just fire the weapons, because it has, turrets here and there. Those can actually fire at this third opponent and make the job a lot easier. I wish I
That's
knew
fun.
that the first time I played it. So
That's
yeah.
fun. Yeah, I could see that being that could be super fun in a regular game of 40K too.
Yeah, it could be a way to involve a Titan, even though no one really properly controls it and has very limited aiming capabilities, but
Right.
still, it's there.
Kind of treating it as a gun emplacement on auto fire or something.
Very much like that, yes.
Very nice, very nice. So we also have people. People are kind of the most difficult, I think, to adjudicate because normally they should be able to move around as well. So you're kind of end up using modified relic rules for them. They involve important imperial officials, kind of like in our last episode, the Cardinal Wedinger was a objective for Canoness Sethano, much to her chagrin. Oh, Wangenheim, not Bedinger. Wangenheim. How could I forget that name?
This could also include valuable commanders, maybe not actually the commander of your army, but could be a defeated army elsewhere in the game. Just like, a bit like the Adepticon games. Sorry, the Adepticon team tournament, where this year they had Jason Voorhees just show up on the table.
Yep.
That kind of thing. He doesn't actually belong on the table, but suddenly one of the other players in a campaign, if you're doing multiple people doing a campaign together, if one of them is defeated, then maybe their general fled, and you have to locate and secure him and make sure he's okay so he can be taken back to the good people.
Or even something similar to the last episode where we had a commissar who'd been captured and beaten and was unconscious. Simple stuff like that, and really easy to model too, actually.
Yeah.
Games
Workshop even has some fallen Space Marine objective markers.
They do, yeah. Good point.
I think they're still in metal though, so
that's okay. We also have informants, so I'm sure the Dark Angels are very interested in that kind, or the Inquisition, looking for informants who may or may not be very excited about being captured, actually. So that might be interesting.
Yeah, you probably don't want to be captured by the Dark Angels because, well, if you have information, or if they think you have information, they will probably torture you to death to make sure that they get the information. So if you don't have anything, too bad for you.
What's that Imperial thought of the day? Innocence is no excuse or something.
Yeah.
Anyways, we've also got just general people of personal importance, so they don't even have to be officials or anything like that. If you have an enemy warlord who's, say, in love with a young woman or a young man in one of the cities or something, maybe that's something that you could have leverage against that warlord by capturing the person that they care about. So just keep interesting story elements like that in mind. What next? We have relics. Relics are also very obvious, aren't they?
Yeah. The classic one is, of course, the items of historical nature.
Mm-hmm. Again, also in our last episode, the jawbone of Saint Calixtus would have been absolutely perfect as a historical objective.
If you look at most of the armories in the different codex books now, yes, there's a certain magical nature to these relics, but most of all, it's some kind of ancient weapon or ancient armor that has been passed along for centuries, probably a couple of millennia, because they've been of some massive importance at some point. It's like, okay, yeah, Armor of Dorn. Yeah, is supposedly I think it's a power armor that has supposedly been worn by Rogel Dorn himself, which is kind of interesting because Rogel Dorn was massive, and this is a normal Space Marine armor.
Maybe he wore it when he was young. Maybe. He wore that when he was a little boy. Just a wee lad.
Yeah.
Interesting. A lot of these will be like mechanical or whatever. And sometimes the bonus, I would say sometimes I think the bonuses that characters get from wielding some of these relics is not magical nor mechanical. It's just like this psychosomatic belief that they're going to whoop butt with it and they just do better.
Yeah.
I mean, that's true for anything that has to do with morale. So relics and technology in general, I think it's okay to say, listen, if they pick it up, use it as a piece of war gear if you want. So like if you have a magical sword or a magical or some kind of mechanical device, don't be afraid to just tell people, instead of this being an actual relic, like a relic objective, when they pick it up, their character can actually put it on and use it as war gear, and then when they're killed, just put the objective back on the table.
Yeah, so the power sword in the stone.
The chain sword in the stone? Yeah.
Yeah. But still, that's most of them, but I think the most important, or the last one we should cover would be key positions. Simply a strategic advantage on the battlefield.
Yeah. That's just as, or maybe more important than information.
And when we're talking about key positions, we're talking about hills or buildings, weapons batteries, or fortified positions. And these are probably the one type of more objective that we pretty much all have on our table, at least one or two of each game. I think pretty much every game I play, we always put a couple of objectives inside a building or on a bunker or just some kind of building like this.
Instead of just putting the objective in, try to come up with a reason why. Try to come up with a narrative reason why that objective, that building is so important, or why that objective is in that ruin. You'll find that even with those simple changes, those simple things that you do, you will have so much more enjoyment in the actual game itself.
So, now that we covered a lot of different types of objectives that you can use in the games, let's take a quick break and we'll be back with how to put them into your narrative.
Whoop, whoop. Take it away, Wendy.
Interested in the offbeat world of 40K? Is your bits box full of 20-year-old space elves? Have you ever searched for something out of production 40K on eBay? Well, hold on to your zotes and head over to Corsair Radio. It covers the full scope of the hobby, homebrew rules, fluff, campaigns, oddball models, and more. From Terra to the Eye of Terror, visit us at corsairradio.blogspot.com. That's corsairradio.blogspot.com.
Welcome back! So in this segment, we're going to present just a few examples of some narrative objectives you can use in your games. Clearly, some of the stuff we talked about in the previous segment aren't represented here, and you really should do everything you can to build on this. And please go ahead and send them to us. We'll do maybe another quick segment on this at a later date, and definitely give anyone who creates anything awesome credit for it. And when the time for the annual packet comes around, we'll add them there too. There's very little more important to formulating an in-depth narrative for your games than the nature of your army's objectives. Narrative objectives break from the usual 6 mysterious objectives in order to facilitate telling a more specific story.
And although it would be most interesting to discuss special objectives with your opponent before the game begins and during the game, you can still roll randomly to determine what you get. Whenever you place an objective marker, refer to the tables we are going to talk about now, and you can also add a +1 to the table if you're not interested in running the traditional mysterious objective table.
Right. So this table is just like a d6 roll. On a 1, you use the traditional mysterious objective table. On a 2 through 4, you use your factions mysterious objective table, and on 5+, you use the environmental objective table. But again, we really more recommend that you just put whatever you want on the table, unless you truly don't think that the armies that are facing each other will know what they are. Maybe you only want to expose 1 or 2 objectives. Maybe you pick 1 or 2 of the objectives on the table to be a specific thing, and then you roll randomly for the other 4. It's entirely up to you. Now, if you want to make them mysterious, just be sure to keep track of which number objective you placed in order to determine which player gets to determine the nature of the objective when it's revealed. In the supplement, we're going to have a 1 through 6 list for each faction in 40K. We also have 7 environments that you can choose from, which also each has a 1 through 6. We're obviously not going to spend 20 minutes going over each and every one of these lists, but we're going to talk vaguely about them when we describe all these different objectives to you. Again, these are just to give you ideas for your own games. If you want to download the On Your Tabletop PDF for this episode, that's up to you. Or you can just use what we describe here as a springboard for your own mysterious or narrative objectives. So starting it off, we have biological discovery. This objective is very tough to pin down. At the end of every player turn, scatter this objective d6 inches, with a hit indicating no scatter. If it would scatter off the board, then scatter it in the exact opposite direction instead. So this is an objective that's available on the jungle list. So it's just like a little like frog, or maybe even a tyrannid or something that your unit is chasing around the board trying to capture, and they're either like getting information about it with tactical objectives, or they capture it at the end of the turn or at the end of the game with a regular mission. Next we have the climatic inhibitor. The unit holding this objective are immune to whatever special rules in play to simulate the environment that you're in. And this is the one that's available in all of the climatic tables.
And then you have the command relay. The unit holding this objective may reroll the leadership tests. And if a model in this unit grants its leadership bonus to other units in your army, they may also reroll for leadership tests which use this model's leadership. And
yeah, that one's a popular one for Astra Militarum and other similar very regimented armies lists.
Yeah. And then there's the dark node. Darkness permeates the ground near this objective. The unit holding this objective gain the shrouded special rule. The mending blackness, however, creeps into the minds of those nearby, A non-Necron unit holding the objective suffers a -2 to their leadership until they are no longer holding it.
Yes, this is one of the objectives that we had in our previous supplement for, I believe it was Spear of Macragge.
Yeah, I do actually like that this one actually gives you a penalty.
Yes, some do give you somewhat of a penalty. Some are just bonuses. It's very mixed. Data bank. This objective allows the unit holding it to upload data throughout the battle. The longer you hold the objective, the more information you gather. Instead of scoring this objective normally, you simply gain 1 victory point each turn you hold it. So this objective is used in a lot of factions because it's a very common one. The Excruciator. I wonder which faction this is for. The unit holding this objective has a +1 to their power from pain. At the beginning of each turn, roll a die. On a 1, the objective deals D6 Strength 3 AP- wounds to the unit holding it. Units with feel no pain are immune to this damage. So it's basically that very much benefits a Dark Eldar player, but is actually quite a detriment to most other units.
Next up is Fortified Precision. The nearest piece of the terrain to this objective, which is not a fortification, increases the cover save it provides by 1.
Yeah, this one is used in the Mechanicum list. It's also used in the Iron Hands list, and it's also, I put it in the jungle list because for that one, it just represents a really super dense jungle instead of an actual, constructed fortified position.
Yeah. And then there's one for the Space Marines of any kind, Gene Seed. Mm-hmm. Whether a fallen comrade or the genetic heritage of an entire chapter, this objective is of ultimate importance to Astartes. If this objective is held by a unit whose faction objective table has this objective on it, then it is worth double victory points when scored.
Mm-hmm. Then we have Geothermal Vent. This objective is important for the war effort, though can sometimes sputter with scalding hot mud and steam. Roll a die at the beginning of every player turn. On a 1 or a 6, the Geothermal Vent produces a fog bank, placed by the controlling player within 3 inches of the objective. On a 1, before the fog bank is placed, models within D6 inches take Strength 3 AP3 hits as if from an exploding vehicle.
And if you want to find the rules for the fog bank, just look up our annual, because it's in there.
Yep. And then we have Injured Hero. Units controlled by the player who place this objective enjoy the Stubborn special rule while holding it. So basically, it only gives you Stubborn if you're holding your own Injured Hero.
Yep. Then we have Medical Supplies. A non-vehicle unit holding this objective enjoys a +1 to their Feel No Pain special rule, or a 6+ Feel No Pain if they don't have it already.
Very simple.
Yes, and this is something I really wish that you could have on the Chaos Boon table, because at the game I was playing on Sunday, I got it's Pleasure from Pain, really. I think it's called that, actually, on the Chaos Boon table, and I already have Feel No Pain, so I didn't get anything.
Yeah, just some of those things, the +1 would be really nice if they said it specifically.
And we have another one called Oasis. Place a small forest or a pond where the objective is.
Simple. Yeah, obviously this is one used in the arid objectives. And that would definitely be an important objective if you're in a desert.
Oh, yes.
The next one we have is Official. This is an important official in your faction, but they can be difficult to control. This objective causes a -1 leadership to the unit holding it. If the unit falls back, the objective moves with them. If the unit falling back then runs off the board, the objective continues to follow them and then also runs off the board. This objective is worth double victory points whenever you score it. So this is somebody who's super important, but they really are a pain in the neck. This is very much inspired by Wangenheim, to be perfectly honest. And then if you're running tactical objectives and you draw that objective that fell off the board, go ahead and just draw a new objective because reasons. And yeah, this is definitely one that is in the Sisters of Battle list, the Adeptus Sororitas list, and a few of the others who would be kind of guarding important officials. Next, we have Person of Interest. This is a person who has information important for completing the mission at hand or even pivotal to the overall health of your faction. This item is treated as a relic. However, instead of scoring this objective normally, it generates 1 victory point per turn as it divulges the information it has to the unit holding it. At the end of each player turn, if no one is holding the Person of Interest objective, then the opponent of the owner of the closest unit may move this objective as if it were an infantry model. So your opponent moves the objective away from you as it runs away, as it tries to escape capture.
Phase inhibitor is the next one. If a Necron unit deep strikes within 12 inches of the phase inhibitor, they automatically suffer a deep strike mishap. However, any Necron unit within 12 inches of the phase inhibitor which lose close combat gets +5 to all sweeping advance checks.
Yeah, I kind of see the sweeping advance against a Necron unit, and I actually even kind of see them failing a leadership check, not as breaking morale, but starting to phase out instead. And so the phase inhibitor stops them from kind of phasing out. Therefore, they can pass their sweeping advance checks.
Then there's the Psychic Bulwark. The unit holding this objective gains a +1 to their Deny the Witch rolls. Models in this unit making Deny the Witch rolls for a different unit also gain the same +1. So it's basically just something there is making your Psychers slightly stronger in trying to prevent other people or anything psychic from happening in this close area.
Next, we have the Regeneration node. All means of ignoring wounds immediately after a failed save, such as Feel No Pain and reanimation protocols, may be re-rolled by the unit holding this objective.
And if I'm not mistaken, I think I saw that one with the Blood Angels.
Yep, that's one of the ones the Blood Angels can take. The Tyranids can take it, and someone else. Yep, and also the Necrons can take it. Next is Red Paint. I wonder who this relic's for.
I think it's got something to do with WOG.
WOGing, yes. This objective is a relic. Any orc vehicle carrying this relic has no movement speed restrictions usually imposed by a relic. In fact, the vehicle may move an additional 1 inch when turbo boosting.
If you make this relic, please model it as a bucket of paint.
Yes. And I'll tell you what's really awesome is a regular paintbrush, like a regular everyday paintbrush that you would use to paint your models with. If you trim down the handle, like a wood one, if you trim down the handle and cut and trim down the bristles, it looks like a scale paintbrush that the orcs would use. So it's pretty cool.
And then there's a relic, which is the same as the relic used in the mission of the same name from the Warhammer 40,000 rulebook. The unit holding this objective has the Stubborn special rule. And we also have an interesting thing called a Replimat. The unit holding this objective has +1 to its It Will Not Die and repair checks.
Yep. This is on the Iron Hands list and also the Mechanicum list. This is for repairing your stuff. Next we have the Ritual Sites. The nearest piece of terrain to this objective, which is not a fortification, is a ritual site. All psychic tests made within the piece of terrain may reroll their 1s. Eldar and Dark Eldar suffer a -1 leadership while within a ritual site. It is definitely tainted by chaos, and it is definitely featured in those lists. We have a Scarab spawning vent. If a non-Necron unit is holding this objective at the end of their psychic phase, roll a die. If the result is a 1, then the unit must pass a leadership check on 3d6. If this check is failed, then the player's opponent gains control of the unit at the beginning of the owning player's shooting and assault phases, treating all friendly units instead as enemy units. The effect continues in the controlling player's turn, though the unit may only continue combat if they are still engaged. Otherwise, they may take no further actions. The effect ends at the beginning of the owning player's next turn. Of course, if the unit is still holding that objective, they must check again. Brutal Necron objective.
Yep, that's the mind control scarabs.
Yeah.
And we have the Shrine, which is basically an objective that gives you Fearless.
Yep, that is definitely on the Adeptus Sororitas list. It's also on the chaos lists as well, so it's really is multi-use. I would probably actually add that it's only fearless for the faction or the side that placed it.
Yeah. Soulstone. A soulstone has been found embedded in a foolish alien's statue. If this objective is held by a unit whose faction objective table has this objective on it, then it's worth double victory points when scored. Additionally, any unit holding this objective has the counterattack special rule, as the soulstone whispers for warnings in their minds.
Woohoo.
Those sneaky Eldars.
Spare parts. This is similar to the Replomat, just a little bit different. A vehicle unit holding this objective enjoys the It Will Not Die special rule if it didn't already have it, or a +1 to the roll if they do. This is available usually in one of the environmental ones. Spawning pool. This one is clearly Tyranid in nature. Every player turn, regardless of whether and who is holding this objective, roll a die. On a 1, generate a unit of D6 Hormigons as if they had disembarked from the spawning pool as they would a transport. This unit is under the control of one of the Tyranid players, determined randomly if there are more than one. This unit counts as a kill point for that player and has no command benefits.
Then there's the summoning portal. Every player turn, regardless of whether and who is holding this objective, roll a die. On a 1, generate a unit of D3 models from a single troop selection in the Chaos Demons Codex. The chosen type of unit is the Chaos Demons or Chaos Space Marines player's choice. If there are more than one Chaos player, then determined randomly. That unit disembarks from the objective as if it were a transport, and this unit is also under control of and counts as a kill point for the player that chose it. The unit also has no command benefits. So it's a chaos spawning portal. Then there's the STC. A heavy computer bank contains the information needed to unlock an ancient technological secret. If this objective is held by a unit whose faction objective table has this objective on it, then it is worth double victory points when scored.
So in some of these, it doesn't matter who places it. All that matters is that it's on your faction's objective table. So if a Mechanicum player places an STC objective, then a unit from the Imperial Knights Codex, which also has STC on its list, also gets the special bonus for scoring it. So the next one is a weapons node. This one's super simple. This objective is generally accompanied by a weapon type, so it's kind of got extras of those weapon, or it in some way enhances that weapon. You can imagine, like for the Dark Eldar, this is basically just a emplaced splinter rack, kind of. So this objective is generally accompanied by a weapon type. All weapons with that keyword in a unit holding this objective are twin linked.
If it's a plasma node, then all plasma rifles are suddenly twin linked.
That's exactly correct. Tactical position. This objective has nothing of note. This is just a tactically important position to hold. Every single table that we presented here today has tactical position in the number 2 slot. Kind of like nothing of note is in the number 2 slot of your of the regular Mysterious table. This is just all it is, well, that's a good place to hold. Let's hold it.
Yeah. And then we're down to the last 3 objective types. The Tome of Secrets. This objective adds +1 warp charge to your psychic pool if one of your units is holding it. This objective is a relic and has none of the movement speed restrictions usually imposed by a relic. So that's a nice one. I like it.
Yeah, I think it's really cool. You just add it to pick it up and move it around. You have a book. You found a book. Congratulations. And it provides you with some secret knowledge that allows you to add to your psychic pool, which is pretty neat.
Then there's the Void node. The unit holding this objective benefits from a single Void shield which regenerates as normal. And that can be powerful.
Yes, it can. We have the Webway node. Every Eldar player turn, if they are holding this objective, roll a die. On a 6, the Webway node generates a unit of D3 Harlequin troop members as a single unit under the control of the player who generated it. They don't have upgrades. The unit disembarks from the objective as if it were a transport. This unit counts as a kill point for that player and has no command benefits. Additionally, the webway node counts as any edge of the board for the purposes of reserves arriving for the player holding it. So it kind of acts like a regular webway node or webway portal, sort of, kind of, except for the free Harlequins.
Yeah, and I guess that even if you don't have Harlequins or don't want to use Harlequins in the game, you can probably also disembark normal Eldar foot soldiers.
Yeah, guardians or witches.
Yeah. So
that's the list. Again, give these a try, please, and let us know how they work out for you. We'll definitely be using these in the future, so it will be referring to this list. So we'll say in our missions, we'll say use this table or this table. So just keep that in mind as we go forward. All right, we have 2 more segments for you, so please stay tuned before we close out the show.
Is live life in the hobby? Is live life in the hobby? Narrative gaming is so much fun. That's the way it ought to be done. Is live life in the hobby? Is live.blogspot.com.
Next, we want to follow up with a truly ancient listener request for some assistance with my buddy Curtis's Craft World Lugganath fluff. So, previously, we've been discussing, brand new fluff, fluff for new Space Marine chapters and whatnot. This is an actual established craft world, but has very little in the way of fully fleshed out information, which is always a great way to start. It's nice to start with an existing chapter or an existing faction that might have a lot of room for development. Lugganath is basically just a regular standard craft world that was ravaged by a disease called the brittle coma. It's because their farseers looked into the realm of Nurgle to try and find Isha, she was one of their gods, right?
Yeah, she's the goddess of life.
Yeah, and they knew they would die, but they believed their souls would enter spirit stones when they died, and so at least there's that. And
yeah.
And at first they were able to actually penetrate the Garden of Nurgle, but when they saw what they were facing, they were forced, they had to fight. They had to fight the enemies there, and they battled for days and days and days and days. And when in the end they became kind of infused with this disease, and their souls were lost in the Immaterium, and they were turned into wailing trees that produce Nurglings. Basically,
yeah.
Like the trees actually create little Nurgling fruits.
Yeah, I guess that's an interesting way of talking about rotten apples.
Yeah, they really are little rotten apples, aren't they? So, the chapter has a rough history, difficult history, very dark history. But they still persist to this day, and this listener definitely wants to continue that story, and that's the whole idea, is continuing the story. So what is he going to do to push it forward and kind of tell, not only continue the story of the craft world itself, but also his warband, and try to develop the history of his battle group and his commander, his warlord.
And I think one of the good themes that we found was definitely revenge.
Yeah, revenge, survival, a way to further the Eldar race, really, and not just the craft world itself. And Curtis wants to kind of use a narrative campaign to build the fluff for his army. He's actually written some things out as kind of a preamble. He's starting to tell the story of his warlord Talik, who's a Farseer, who basically invades a Dark Eldar stronghold in Kamara and steals an old Necrontyr, and by Necrontyr I mean actually Old One's relic, which contains the souls of many ancient Eldar from way back before the fall. So he wants to infuse, or at least he tells the council of the craft world that he wants to put these souls into the Infinity Circuit in order to infuse the Eldar souls there with some added vigor, add their rage to the Infinity Circuit so they can use them as wraith constructs. Very effective wraith constructs, I think. At least that's what I believe. I think he's just hinting at a lot of that, so I'm interested to see how it develops further. But what I really like is the idea of using a campaign to develop your fluff, especially when you're talking about something that's already established. So if you've already got an established idea for your fluff, and you want to make it your own, then you center things on your warband, like your units, rather than the craft world or the faction as a whole. What I might suggest is, once he's got his backstory down of his warlord, I think it would be a really cool idea to do a quick 3-game campaign with not as many wraith constructs at first. Kind of come up with some more resources need to be collected in order for him to build up the wraith portion of his army.
Maybe even gather support from the rest of the craft world.
Yeah, gather more support because in his story right now, the craft world, the council is not exactly down with his plan, right? So possibly he may even have to join forces with other craft worlds, or other factions in Eldar society, maybe even Dark Eldar or Harlequins or whatever. Dark Eldar is a great choice because I think that if he wants to, he could bring his narrative to his competitive events too. And Eldar plus Dark Eldar is a really competitive option right now. And if that's something he wants to do for those competitive events, he could actually use his games at the competitive events to tell the story. Not exactly everything that happens, like, every battle or whatever, but he could actually kind of let those games and let chance decide how the story goes, right? So it would be him allied with the Dark Eldar because they know where something is, or they know where to find something, and they're raiding other factions for this for this information or for these relics in order to help further build the wraith portion of the army or whatever.
I really do support the whole doing a narrative mini campaign of this, because I'm already helping one of the guys at the club with this, because he's been trying to flesh out the story behind his like I talked about last episode. He's trying to flesh out the story of his blood angels that are being slowly corrupted by a questionable inquisitor, and we're doing small campaign just to have fun with it.
Yeah, that's awesome, dude. That's really cool. Yeah, and I think it's a great way to do it. Just let it
Yeah,
happen naturally. You might be surprised what happens when you develop your fluff narratively.
yeah,
It's cool to. It's not only cool to like write your own stuff, but it's also cool to be surprised by, to kind of let fate decide what happens and how things turn out. I think it's a
yeah.
really great way to do it.
It is, and even if you don't like the outcome of some games, and you can always cherry pick a little bit, and you don't have to feel bad about that. I think.
No, like I said, if he decides to take that Eldar Dark Eldar list to a competitive event, he should feel free to like ignore some games and use others, for that purpose.
Yeah, it's more fun when you do some games that where something really cool happened. You pick that up and implement it into the story. If you were getting your backside kicked, because sometimes you have to lose at some point. So
Yeah,
why not
and
make it into an interesting and emotional story?
yeah, exactly. Some of the best stories can come from when your faction didn't do so well, right? Or when your warband, how your warlord deals with defeat is just as important as exulting in his victories or her victories, right?
Yep.
Thanks to everyone who's been submitting their fluff and asking for assistance. Keep on submitting them. We'll get to them eventually. Uh, really pleased about that. We love it when you involve us in your creative escapades.
With that, I think we're pretty much done. It's time to close up the show, isn't it?
Yep. Stay with us. Stick with us. Listen to these messages. Then we'll close out the show.
Transmission incoming from the Adeptus Terra podcast. A new monthly UK-based 40K podcast has come into the universe, based around the hobby as a whole and the rich background of the 41st millennium. If you're looking for a fun, chilled-out podcast focusing on the fluff of the 41st millennium with tricks and tips on taking part in the hobby, then why not give us a listen? You can find us on iTunes and Facebook as the Adeptus Terra podcast. You never know, you might just like it. Message ends.
Then we're back. Hi. Well,
It's
what?
I think we've been talking for long enough now, so
Yes.
I think it's I think it's the time that we shut up and leave the internet for someone else.
I suppose before we close out the show, I'd like to let everyone know that we have a Combat Patrol tournament coming up on July 18th at Flipside Gaming in East Greenbush, New York. 400 points. Go to the Upstate Honor Guard Facebook page. Upstate Honor Guard Facebook page, and all the information is available there. Like that page and join the event, and we'll be happy to have you.
And as always, we love positive feedback on iTunes.
Yep, and on Facebook. Please contact us on Facebook. You can just do a search for Masters of the Forge.
There's also the Twitter space, Masters of Forge.
That's right. David Annandale shared our post on his novel. So, boom, shared. So special.
Yes, internet fame is a big thing.
Oh, it's so great.
And of course, there's the blog, mastersoftheforge.com.
Yep,
and that is where you can find all our supplements and the annual that we just talked about.
Mm-hmm. Yep, definitely. You definitely want to bookmark that one, folks. So that's where all the rules go, and everything's posted there.
We do link to it on Facebook too when we do our episode posts, so it's not really that hard to find.
Yeah. So we're still looking for information. We haven't done the show notes yet for our next Versus episode. We've had a few suggestions by listeners, but we'd like to get a few more. So if you're interested in seeing a couple of minor factions in 40K fluff expanded upon in a Versus episode, please let us know, and we'll choose the one we like the most. Other than that, I think that's it. Oh, we want to thank Jason Holt for editing the show today. So look for that episode next fortnight. But until then,
play the game the way you want to.
This podcast is protected by the Creative Commons Attribution, No Derivatives, Non-Commercial International License. More information about this license and contact information if you have any requests can be found at our blog, mastersoftheforge.com. The music used in this podcast was made by Podod of the duo Sublevel 3. The track is used with his permission.